In the last episode, we discussed and evolved 5 elements of presentation. We also identified the impact of 5 elements on each other. Most importantly, we reinforced the importance of learning objectives in the context of feedback. In this episode, we shall identify the possible reasons of failures in presentation, list the 3 dimensions, 3Ds of presentation, correlate the feedbacks with 3Ds of presentation. Can I start my questioning again? Basic part. What are the reasons that presentation may fail? What may happen? That these are the reasons by which my presentation didn't go the way I had planned to go. Whatever.
So
Tell
can
me.
I try?
Please.
Technical glitches, nervousness, not preparing well enough in advance, stage fright, which also comes with nervousness.
Good one. So nervousness, technical glitches. You said anything else?
Yeah, not preparing in advance.
Not preparing in advance. So these 3 things. Anything else? Why presentation go for toss?
Can I try?
Please. And don't ask, can I try? Just shoot. Go ahead. Yeah.
Mental state, like Urvi said, nervousness and unpreparation, etc., which affects your body and dialect.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. So mental state.
Misjudging the audience.
So Ariman?
Yes, like misjudging the audience.
No, I couldn't understand the first word.
Misjudging the audience. Like for example, if you're addressing a nation after a mass shooting, you can't be really making jokes, right?
So misjudging the audience. Fantastic. Okay. So that anything else? What all things can make my presentation a complete fuss?
If your content doesn't really realign, as he said, doesn't align with your audience. It's yeah.
Anything else? Anything else?
Not beating around the bush and getting to the point of your presentation.
Okay, not beating around the bush. Start with the topic direct. Today's topic was the feedback. My first question I asked, why do you need feedback? Otherwise, I would have started once upon a time, there lived a king,
But I'm
yeah, right.
a little confused. That's a reason that can help the presentation. Why would your presentation go for a toss if you don't beat it at the bush?
Okay.
Was the point that if we beat it on the bush, our presentation will go for a toss, or was it the other way around?
Fine.
I don't understand.
Quite possible. So Anahita said that if you don't start the topic and if you take too much of a time to begin with, it may go for a toss.
Okay.
Right.
But then again, that's under the condition that you do the beating around the bush properly, as long as you know how to build up the suspense.
Super.
How do you even beat
up.
around the bush properly?
Super.
Yeah.
I mean, like, build up suspense is pretty. It's a big virtue to have, right?
If you do it wrong, you can definitely lose your audience.
Right. So now, don't you feel the learning objective matters a lot? Why am I creating suspense? I can ask that question. Hey, why have you started with this story? Why did you start with a question? Why did you start with the probing question? Why did you start with the experience that you have? You must have gone through that, or you will go through that. How a presentation can be open. It could be story, it could be history, it could be anecdote, it could be joke, it could be data, it could be movie, it could be anything. But the question comes in, why?
I think suspense provokes thought, and
Right.
it also helps to involve the audience a lot better if handled well. So even like when you were not given an answer, you're just asking questions, and I thought you just weren't satisfied with what you were saying. So I just searched and made it, okay, why is feedback fundamental?
Perfect.
Because you didn't give an answer, you were just listening. So, yeah.
So go ahead.
You can build structure to your talk.
Sorry. I couldn't get that. I'm sorry. Can you restate?
It can give structure to your entire monologue.
Perfect. Fine. So now if you really say there are 3 areas where my presentation can go for toss, or any presentation, any expression can go for toss if I don't pay attention to these 3 areas. I call this as 3Ds. I pay attention to this a lot because it has helped me always. So there is one area that I can flunk, that is design, and my expression will go for toss. There is another area, development. If I don't, again, and finally a delivery. Now what you are going through now, at what we start at 4 o'clock, for me probably it's a delivery, right? Actually I'm presenting it. Actually I'm putting forth my ideas. When you'll actually go on the stage for presenting, what you do is delivery. What you do before, somebody said preparation, is design and development. I am not taking you into the depth of these three, but I'm telling you what is the purpose of me discussing all these things. One is I need to know why feedback is necessary. You said improvement. Then we said improvement in what? How would you measure the improvement? When will you say that improvement is needed? On what basis you say that improvement is needed? So there has to be some benchmark, and that benchmark is learning objective. Along with the learning objectives, we saw 4 more things. And then we are saying, if I don't want to mess up the presentation, or if I want to really, really do a good job in the presentation, what all things that I pay attention to? That will lead me to demanding the feedback also. So I can demand the feedback on design, I can demand the feedback on development, I can demand the feedback on delivery. Or most of the time, people or the audience themselves give you the feedback, but they don't tell you that this feedback is on the design. They don't tell you that this feedback is on development, but they express that. Right? Probably somebody would say that, hey, you know what? In the midst of the presentation, if you would have cut down that particular story, we felt a little bored in the midst of the presentation. Now tell me, which area of this particular feedback is all about? I, as an audience, giving you the feedback in the midst of the presentation, after 15, 20 minutes or after 30th minute, we felt that was too much of that movie could have been a little less.
I think development.
Yeah.
Development and
I think a little bit of delivery.
Yeah.
Delivery and
Design.
Now look at that. I have designed that, okay, the session plan. Session plan is all about, in first 2 minutes, I'll do this. In next 2 minutes, I'll do this. In next 3 minutes, I'll do this. Please do that. Huh? So when you are presenting 10 minutes, importance of session plan is, the need of session plan is utmost. When you are flying from Bombay to New York, pilots are at relief. But when you are flying from Bombay to Pune, pilots are on their toes. Because you have hardly 20 minutes. But in Bombay, New York, you have more than 16 hours. So longer the presentation, I'm not saying that longer the presentation, you need less preparation. But shorter the presentation, you have less time to monitor. You have less time to control. You have less time to do the course correction. So I have done my plan, session plan. And in that, I am saying that, look, from 15th minute, from 18th minute, I am doing this particular part, which is connected to this learning objective. Here, participant would see a movie from which they will identify what mistakes an athlete does. And that precisely I want them to know. And therefore, I have selected a movie which will run for 5 minutes. That was my plan. That was a session plan. Now, in development, I will actually select a movie. I can select movie, I can select a clip from various ways. That is what is my development. So would this clip will help me, or would this clip? So basic session plan I am ready with. In these 5 minutes, I will show a movie clip. Which movie clip? That will come into development. Now the feedback that has come to me says that we felt it is, it could have been lesser also. Now there could be 2 reasons. 5 minutes itself is much longer time than you had expected, or the interest of the movie or the capturing characteristic of a movie was not that high. So if audience come to the conclusion that movie was fantastic, but it was played little longer than we expected, you could have done it in 3 minutes because we have understood it. It is a feedback towards design. If the audience tells you, yeah, we need that much time, but you know what? The clip that you had selected was not really helping us to go into the depth of the topic. Now that is development. Are we understanding this now? Everybody so far so good?
Yes, sir.
Right? Now, when you get the feedback, unless I understand what to do with this feedback, what's the use of that feedback? Isn't it? So feedback is for improvement. Now, this is not something that I have said. You have said all these things. You said feedback is for improvement. You said feedback is for speaker. You said feedback will help me continuing the communication. You said feedback will help me in improving the interactions. All these things you said in first 11 minutes. Am I right? Now,
Yes,
if now feedback has to help me in all these things, don't you feel where to use that particular feedback? It is important.
yes.
Right? So if I want to make use of feedback, I must know where to use it. Then probably I'll be able to use it. Why am I communicating with someone? Because I have some idea in my mind. I have some desires that people must appreciate this particular idea. People should think on this particular idea. Somebody can fund me after having the idea. Venture capitalists should come forward and say that, okay, give me your finance proposal. I will be able to fund you. At least at the end of this particular presentation, the judges sitting, one of the judges should ask me, should be able. So this is something that I need to go ahead with learning objectives. Finally, we said the feedback, knowingly, unknowingly, comes from 3 areas. Because while preparing for the presentation, I need to pay attention to these 3 areas. One is design. Design is virtual delivery. Right now, it is physical delivery, manifested delivery. But I had planned about it. So when Riddhi came up with this particular idea, I set aside around 90 minutes for first draft and another 120 minutes for how this entire thing should go. Because they will be crossing 50 people in this particular meeting. They will be at least sitting there for at least 1.5 hour average, 1.5 hours into 50. This is a big investment, right? So design, development, and delivery. And now we are coming to the conclusion that if at all feedback is received, I must be able to make a note as to where this feedback is, which area this feedback is, where I need to improve. Is it in design? Is it in development? Or is it in delivery? Are you understanding this?